But this is what made the thrill of it, of walking on the bridge. Yep, it's a pretty big drop right there. Is this? I mean, this could just crumble away at any moment, see? But it's sturdy. It's not gonna fall. It will not fall. See? Think about it. It holds trains, or it did, you know? So it's not gonna fall.
A crime scene will tell you a story. Just stand back and observe, watch, see what it's going to tell you. That's why evidence is important. Once you put all those pieces of evidence together like a huge puzzle, it can tell you that story. And so, yes, I agree with what Prosecutor Ives said, that there's things that existed there at that crime scene that when the day comes, put them all back together and here's the story it's going to tell.
Ahead, inside the mind of a killer. And could this happen again?
So when I look at the photograph of the bridge guy, it's hard to tell anything about this. You look at the guy and it's so pixelated, so blurry. Anytime you try to zoom in, it just gets worse. So you're creating pixels and pareidolia by looking at these photographs, but when you look at that, you can't tell anything about it. It's like, okay, he's got a blue jacket on, he's got a pair of jeans. You know, in one section, he looks like he's got a big bulge right here, and the other one, it looks flat. So when you're staring at that picture, you're not really getting anything that is of value, other than it's some dude on the bridge.
February 13th, 2017. One man, two girls, and a story full of twists and turns. Abigail Williams and Liberty German went on a nature hike at the Monon High Bridge Trail. Their last Snapchat, and then they go missing and are murdered. A search called off at midnight resumed on Valentine's Day.
Over 100 people out searching the area last night, walking both sides of the creek bank.
In Carroll County, police are said to regroup and restart the search for two missing girls.
Keep together, okay? That way we cover more property, quicker time. 21, Compter 5.
One day after the crime, law enforcement announces the discovery of bodies in a press conference, seeking public's assistance.
We have found two bodies. We are investigating this as a crime scene. We suspect foul play.
State police and the FBI have been on the scene now for several hours. A number of units and teams have been here trying to gather information.
Bodies have been positively identified as Abigail J. Williams, 13, of the Delphi area, and Liberty Rose Lynn German, 14, of the Delphi area. This is considered a double homicide investigation.
2 days after the crime, cops release a chilling photograph of the suspected killer, known as the Bridge Guy.
The two girls discovered in the woods, authorities asking for your help tonight. Their last Snapchat and the image of a man authorities would like to talk to.
3 days after the crime, a stunning twist as the Maxwell residence was searched on Bicycle Bridge Road. Just 3 days after the murders, electronic devices were seized.
Just hours ago, police surrounded this home.
Accusations fly as a community is on high alert.
And they now have enough evidence to call him the prime suspect.
9 days after the murders, cops release audio of the suspected killer.
We do have some new information for you today. Liberty had the presence of mind to turn on her video camera. But there's enough there that somebody could recognize this person's voice.
And if you're watching, we'll find you.
11 days after the crime, FBI serves search warrant at a home in Peru, Indiana, and electronic devices were seized. Fast forward to March 17th, 2017. The property owner, Ronald Logan, was arrested on an unrelated probation violation for drinking and driving to the trash transfer station.
There's been more than 11,000 tips come in to our command center.
Somebody knows something.
On the day of the murders,
Down the hill.
Logan pled guilty to being a habitual traffic offender and received 4 years in prison on April 3rd. Skip ahead to July 2017. 5 months after the murders, the FBI released a composite sketch of the suspect and a profile of the suspect being in the age range of 30 to 65, a height of 5'6" to 5'10", and weighing between 180 and 220 pounds, with reddish-brown hair.
Somebody has to know this person, recognize that voice.
It's not easy, and a lot of people are putting a lot of work into this, and we're hoping that the tip's there, and we're going to find it.
On September 25th, 2017, a sex offender who went on the run from Johnson County, Indiana, on the day the sketch was released, was arrested in Colorado. Daniel Nations became a notable person of interest in this case. Bearing a close resemblance to the sketch, a previous criminal history showed Nations was convicted of sex offenses and stalking women and children on hiking trails and public bathrooms.
To call this a cold case is just ridiculous. It's not even close.
2018, Ron Logan heads back to court for a modification. Judge Curtis Faust released Logan from prison to home detention.
We've learned that investigators will be releasing new information about the man on the bridge.
The 1-year anniversary. Cops cleared Nations.
As you all know, we went out to Colorado and we spent a little bit of time with him. And he's not a person that we care a whole lot about at this moment in time. And that's all I'll say about Daniel Nations.
And others.
I think that the people that we have talked to at this point in time, we feel confident that there was no. If you're watching this and you're responsible, today may be your day. It might be tomorrow, but I can guarantee you your day's coming.
Skip ahead 8 more months of silence. Daniel Nations is released and speaks out in August of 2018.
I want to know why I'm not being cleared yet.
November 19th, a man dressed identical to Bridge Guy walked into a Catholic supply store near St. Louis, Missouri, and committed sodomy and shot one woman in the head.
He was armed with a gun. He told the women to strip. When one woman would not comply with his demands, investigators say Bruce shot her in the head. Officials say he then sexually assaulted the other woman.
He was later identified as a respected pastor named Thomas Bruce. Moving on to 2019, a series of men hit the hot seat as they become persons of interest. January 8th, Charles Eldridge, arrested in Randolph County after soliciting sex from a 13-year-old girl. Garrett Kurtz, a local man linked to the property owner and crime scene, is arrested for the murder of Nicole Bowen on March 29th.
Did you or did you not kill Abby and Libby? No, I didn't. And no, I don't.
April 22nd, police announced a new direction and stunned the community. A new sketch of the suspect, saying he's between the ages of 18 and 40, lives in Delphi, and is hiding in plain sight.
It's every town USA, and those things don't happen in every town USA. But it happened in Delphi, Indiana.
June 27th, Paul Etter becomes a person of interest after ending his own life after raping a woman in Tippecanoe County just days prior.
Cops are investigating whether this rape suspect murdered Abby Williams and her best friend Libby German.
Fast forward again to 2021. James Brian Chadwell, arrested on April 19th for sexually assaulting and attempting to murder a 9-year-old girl in Lafayette, Indiana, becomes a person of interest.
Well, he is 42. He is a laid-off welder from Lafayette, Indiana, 20 miles from the city of Delphi, where the 2 girls were slain 4 years ago.
Then, in December 2021, on YouTube, cops put out a press release at 10 o'clock at night.
While investigating the murders of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, protected with the Carroll County Sheriff's Office.
For information on a social media profile, Kegan Klein, Richard Allen. Are these men connected? You'll have to tune in to find out. Right now on True Crime Investigates with Anthony Greeno. Started 7 years ago on February 13th, 2017, when two teen girls, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and 14-year-old Liberty German, were murdered near the historic Monon Eye Bridge in Carroll County, Indiana, in the town of Delphi. The case remains unresolved, and there are notable persons of interest, and a suspect has been arrested. But tonight, we want to find out, are these two men connected? Richard Allen has been moved from Westville to Wabash, and Kegan Klein has been moved from Wabash to Michigan City. Is there a reason for this? Is there more to the story than meets the eye? Coming up tonight on True Crime Investigates, we take you back into the Delphi Murders. But this time, we're talking about the last man to talk to Liberty German before she died.
This profile was being used from 2016 to 2017 on social media applications, including but not limited to Snapchat and Instagram.
This is Anthony Shots, a social media profile of a teenage boy who's clean, cut, and portrays himself as wealthy and owning sports cars. Anthony Shots is always a talk amongst the other teenage girls. He's handsome, charismatic, and he always has the perfect thing to say. This young man is a real-life Casanova, but there's just one problem. That's not Anthony Shots. Those images are actually photos of a known male model that were stolen and used to create this profile. So just who is the man in that picture? Well, he isn't a teenage boy at all. This is 27-year-old Vincent Kowalski, and Indiana State Police say his personal pictures were used to lure young girls. But here's the thing. He's a cop in Alaska, victimized in a catfish scheme and suddenly thrust into the Delphi Murders investigation. His face front and center of a YouTube press release by Indiana State Police. Kowalski wasn't contacted by ISP beforehand. He learned about the connection just like everyone else from YouTube. While working his night shift beat in Alaska, someone sent him a screenshot from Indiana. His face and those old photos were front and center as the newest person of interest.
Just seeing your face blasted all over the news was crazy. Soliciting videos from young girls, like that's disgusting. And it makes me sick. But to know that two young girls possibly lost their life because of my picture, it's the worst of the worst. How you just keeps you up at night as a parent knowing that people are out there like that.
But cops insisted that the man depicted in the photographs is not a person of interest in the case. After police uncovered that the person using the social media profile as Anthony Shots was in communication with Libby German the night before she went missing, Anthony Shots had apparently agreed to meet up with the girls at the bridge on the day of the murders. And stunningly, the next day, he also sent Snapchat messages to a friend of Libby German's. When one of Libby's friends reached out to the Anthony Shots profile and asked if he had heard what happened to her, he responded with, "Yeah, I was supposed to meet them there, but they never showed up." True Crime Investigates was instrumental in linking Kegan Klein to the Anthony Shots profile and linking it to Liberty German through her Instagram account. This man clicked like on one of her photos 50 days before the murders. This was a moment where everyone thought the case was going to be solved, but then questions started to linger. Is that guy really the bridge guy? And then the speculation went wild, finger pointing at his father, Tony, by members of the public. But we all jumped the gun too quick. You see, they asked for information on the creator and the user of the Anthony Shots profile. On December 7th, 2021, I called the Miami County Jail and confirmed that Kegan Klein had been in custody since August of 2020 for over 30 counts of child pornography, child solicitation, and other crimes against children. After police raided his home in connection with the Delphi Murders investigation on February 25th, 2017, after reviewing Libby German's social media messages. In that 2017 interview, Klein admitted multiple times to an FBI agent and the Indiana State Police he is in fact the man who created the account, and that there were several devices that contained explicit, illegal images and videos scattered throughout the home. Klein also took a polygraph test, in which cops say he failed when questioned about the Delphi murders and whether or not he knows the killer.
State Police also acknowledged today that a secondary investigation from information received during the Delphi investigation led them to Klein. You may remember they first learned about him in 2017, but police didn't arrest Klein on child porn charges until 2020.
So Indiana State Police acknowledged that time gap today, but didn't go into explaining why it happened any further. They did say this in a quote: "We do not believe that any person has done anything intentionally wrong, but we will continue to critically evaluate our efforts."
But Kegan Klein wasn't arrested or charged until 3 years later. Law enforcement says cell phone tracing puts Kegan Klein back at his grandparents' house in Peru, about 30 miles from Delphi at the time of the murders, and he has never been officially charged with anything connected to Delphi. But prior to his extremely harsh sentence, and rightfully deserved, Klein was in negotiations with the prosecutor. In an attempt to reach a better plea deal, Indiana State Police took Kegan Klein out of jail with a court order, a sealed order, to the Wabash River near his home, where investigators searched for 40 days. They've never confirmed if they found anything or why they were even there, and it's hard to get a read on the situation. There's only a couple things that could have happened. Klein took them to the river to show them where either the murder weapon was, or a burner phone, or something connected to the crime was, or he fabricated the information and that whole search in the river was a waste of time. But just a few weeks later, cops were searching the home of Richard Allen. Is that just a coincidence that they also dismissed 5 of his felony charges after Richard Allen got arrested? What's even more strange is if we go back to that December 2021 press release on YouTube. Cops weren't asking for information about Kegan Klein. They already knew who he was, and they already knew what the Anthony Shots profile was all about. And then they asked for information about the Yubo app.
Today, Indiana State Police announced that they are looking to expand the list of apps used by Anthony Shots, including one known as Yubo, a social media video live streaming app.
Yubo, formerly known as Yellow, it's a social media app that focuses on live streaming, and it's actually based in France. So it's perhaps not super well known to, throughout the United States, like say a Snapchat or an Instagram, but it's pretty popular overseas.
It's a video streaming site that has a reputation for not being all that scrupulous about age restrictions. So in other words, it's very easy for people who are underage to join the site and start streaming and meeting people. And just as parents may find it difficult to keep up with this flurry of different social media apps and such, predators find it very easy to keep up with what's new. And when they find a site with loopholes like that, they exploit it, and sites like that can become playgrounds for predators.
And from our conversations with Kelly Brown, Kegan Klein is very familiar with that site too. He said it's a place where snuff films are made and that people pay big money for dead kid pics. And with all the secrecy and allegations that there may be another individual involved, then that could possibly mean that this crime is something far worse than we could ever imagine. The FBI, in its detailed report, stated that they believe that the killer may have photographed or videotaped the crime scene and that he took a sock and a pair of underwear as a souvenir. I would only assume if became our suspect, he would have done so to get a better plea, but in a fairly common move by the prosecutor. She pulled a plea agreement negotiation of 25 years, and Klein was faced with the opportunity to plead guilty to 25 counts of graphic crimes against children. But the stipulation was simple. Let the judge decide the sentence in an open plea, and in the mind of a defendant facing some serious time.
The Carroll County prosecutor today insisted he has a solid case against Richard Allen. That's after yesterday's public hearing in the case.
Prosecutors confirm they believe there's another suspect out there, while Allen's defense team say they don't believe there's enough evidence to even convict.
Judge to sign off.
Keenan believes it's likely defense lawyers are just doing their job.
I don't think the state police would have brought this case without solid evidence, and the judge wouldn't have signed off on the probable cause affidavit without solid evidence.
When reviewing a plea agreement, signing 25 to 30 years of your life away is something that is extremely hard to do. But in an open plea, the defendant feels like they have an opportunity to persuade the judge that maybe they're not a bad guy. Maybe they just made a mistake. And everyone is always asking for that second chance. And Klein pleaded guilty, and the judge cracked his ass with 43 years in prison. And he was pissed off after that. But I had to ask the question. I wanted to know, would he answer? Did he do it? And does he know Richard Allen?
Mr. Klein, are you affiliated with the Delphi Murders? Did you kill Anthony Libby?
Did you look for Richard Allen?
He didn't answer me directly right then and there due to all the people and media in his face. However, he did answer my question on the Murder Sheet podcast the following night. Klein said that he does not know Richard Allen, and there's too big of an age gap for them to have met. And we all wonder, was the other person using the Anthony Shots profile Richard Allen? Or is he still out there? Is he in Carroll County? Maybe Miami? Or maybe he's in another country? But tonight, we're digging into court documents in Miami County, because on July 31st, 2023, Kegan Klein was sentenced to 43 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections, with 3 years suspended to probation for multiple felonies involving child exploitation and related offenses. In December 2023, Klein's attorneys appealed his sentence, saying it was manifestly unreasonable based on the nature of the offenses and his character. The legal team said their client has no previous criminal history. Klein used several catfished social media accounts, including Emily Ann 45 and Anthony Shots. In Carroll County prosecutor Nick McClellan's motion at limine, he asked that Klein's name not be allowed to be spoken by Richard Allen's defense team during Allen's trial. Allen has been charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of felony murder in the deaths of Abby and Libby. Cops presume he's the bridge guy, but they did say that there could possibly be someone else involved. But back to Klein. In Miami County, Judge Timothy Spar found the following aggravating circumstances when sentencing Klein. The harm, injury, loss, or damage suffered by the victims of the defendant was significant and greater than the elements necessary to prove the commission of the offenses. The defendant has a history of criminal and delinquent behavior. The victims of some of the offenses were less than 12 years of age. The defendant was in a position having control of some of his victims, and the defendant's sexual behavior and attitudes and selfish, manipulative character support the imposition of additional sentencing consequences upon him. One mitigating circumstance was found. The defendant entered a plea of guilty, saving the state time and expenses of a trial and sparing the victims from having to testify, though that is tempered to some extent by the fact that there was substantial evidence of the defendant's guilt, court documents state. The trial court found that Klein had committed a total of 13 episodes of criminal conduct. According to court documents, Klein solicited sexually explicit videos from young girls when he knew their ages. He manipulated the girls and stalked them. He sought very young girls of specific age ranges. He also serviced himself while watching the videos that he had obtained. An investigation uncovered thousands and thousands of messages between Klein and young girls. In his appeal, Klein asserts that many of his charges should be combined as one act of criminal conduct because they happened on the same day and are closely related in time, place, and circumstance. Klein is incorrect. If that is true, for counts 10 through 20, the amended information alleged that Klein possessed the images on February 25th, 2017. But that was merely the date that the images were seized, court documents state. As the state points out, the evidence shows that the offenses underlying counts 10 through 20 constitute 5 episodes of criminal conduct because the images underlying those counts were created on media managed by Klein on 5 separate dates. Specifically, the state presented evidence that the explicit imaging supporting count 14 was created on September 14th, 2015. The same for count 15 was created on March 17th, 2016. Counts 11 and 12 were created on May 4th, 2016, and the same for counts 10, 16, and 17 were created on May 14th, 2016. The Indiana Court of Appeals said that they focused their analysis on the timing of the offenses and the simultaneous and contemporaneous nature of the crimes, if any. Klein does not dispute that the images supporting these charges were created on 5 separate dates. His sole argument on appeal is that his possession of those images on the same date means that his offenses constitute an episode of criminal conduct under the statute, but the evidence shows that the offenses were neither simultaneous nor contemporaneous. In concluding their decision and affirming Klein's current sentence, the appeals court judges state the trial court did not err when finding that counts 10 through 20 were comprised of 5 episodes of criminal conduct under Indiana Code, Section 3550-1-2. Klein will remain in the Indiana Department of Corrections and is currently housed at the Newcastle Correctional Annex until August 19, 2048. And with that being said, finally, a chapter closes in the Delphi Murders investigation, but another one remains open. And we all have to wonder, is there still another book to be written? And if this is some hostile, dark web, pay big money for hits type of thing, then the question remains, is the mastermind still at large? What if he's watching, lurking from the shadows, possibly right here within the chat? And what if he knows you? But most importantly, who's next? 2022, January. Ronald Logan dies from COVID-like symptoms at the age of 82. Then, on the 5-year anniversary, Kegan Klein speaks on HLN.
Just talking to people, I don't know why I did it really.
Just 11 days after the murders of Abby and Libby, task force investigators served a search warrant on the home that Kegan shared with his dad. At the time, the FBI told the Lafayette Journal and Courier they found nothing to indicate a connection to the Delphi case. So why do you think investigators are putting so much focus on you right now?
I have not a clue. I think it's because they said I was the last person to talk to her, is what they've told me.
And then she shows up at the bridge and they're abducted and later found dead.
Right.
And that was not you?
No, 100% not.
Then in March 2022, the Murder Podcast uncovers transcripts of Kegan Klein's interviews with cops.
That tip was borne out a couple weeks later when Greenlee stumbled upon a pair of transcripts from jailhouse interviews with Kegan Klein that were inadvertently posted on a court website.
We have here in our hand is the 194-page transcript of an interview between Kegan Klein and 2 police officers immediately after his arrest on a variety of charges related to child sexual abuse materials and obstruction of justice.
Greenlee says at first investigators didn't seem too worried about the transcript's release, but then when the interrogation reports hit their website,
later that night we started getting texts from law enforcement saying, what's going on, what else do you have? And then we had a conversation the next day with them.
What this transcript and our release of it did was basically set off a wave of responses from people in the Peru community, in the Delphi area.
And Klein's own words pointed the finger at his father, Tony Klein, as the only other person with access to his social media account. Could have known that Anthony Schatz was going to meet up with the girls on the bridge that day. At the same time, police said cell phone tracing put Kegan Klein back home in Peru at his grandparents' house, about 40 miles away.
We're going to get to the bottom of this.
Carroll County Sheriff Tobe Lesenby has been at the center of the Delphi investigation since the day before the girls' bodies were found. He has received inquiries from around the world, from traditional journalists and podcasters alike.
They follow, I guess, what I would consider a proper channel.
Again, in May, the release of the search warrant from the 2017 documents in the Ron Logan case, raising more online speculation as to his involvement. August 19th, 2022, Indiana State Police take Kegan Klein out of jail to search the Wabash River near his home in Peru, in connection with the Delphi investigation. After a 40-day search and the river concluded on September 28th, 18 days later, cops claim a lost tip, recovered on October 13th, 2022, led police to search the home of Richard Allen. Cops conducted forensic analysis on a firearm seized from Allen's home and were able to link an unspent bullet found at the crime scene to Richard Allen's Sig Sauer model P226 handgun. On October 26, 2022, Richard Allen was arrested and booked in and taken to the White County Jail on October 28th. Halloween 2022, police made an announcement.
But the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and complex investigation. And today was the day.
November 3rd, 2022, the sheriff files for a safekeeping transfer. Judge Diener recuses over YouTube videos and the public's bloodlust for information.
A new court document showed Judge Benjamin Diener recused himself in the case, which the Indiana Supreme Court confirmed earlier this afternoon. In court filings, Judge Diener writes he was attempting to ignore the maelstrom of interest from the public, saying there was already content about his family on YouTube, including photos. Judge Diener writes the public's bloodlust for information before it exists is extremely dangerous. And when the public peddles misinformation with reckless abandon, we all are not safe.
The next day, on November 4th, Special Judge Francis Gall was appointed by the Indiana Supreme Court. Ironically, Kegan Klein has some charges dismissed on November 7th. 2 days later, Richard Allen asked for a public defender. Judge Gall appoints attorneys Andrew Baldwin and Bradley Rosie on November 15th.
Something that they hadn't thought of before. And when they read that, then they can contact us as his lawyers.
They filed for a bail hearing on November 19th, change of venue on the 29th. The judge issued a gag order on December 6th. And to end the year, Baldwin accidentally leaked discovery material to a former inmate, Brandon Woodhouse. In 2023, the court determined the jury would be sequestered from Allen County, but would still happen in Delphi. On April 3rd, Richard Allen confessed 5 or 6 times in a phone call to his wife from prison that he in fact murdered Abby and Libby. Immediately, on December 5th, the attorneys moved to have him transferred from the Westville Correctional Facility, citing mistreatment and travel distance. The court found that the defendant was treated more favorably than others, but approved the Department of Corrections to transfer him if they deemed necessary on April 14th. Then, randomly, Robert Baston and Richard Allen write letters claiming mistreatment at Westville. The defense comes out swinging in a motion to suppress the search, and the prosecution responds May 22nd. A motion in limine regarding ballistics was filed on June 13th. Then, a flurry of events began in September. The judge makes documents public. A child molester serving 40 years defends Richard Allen. Baldwin and Rosie push for a Franks hearing request. The release of a memorandum sparked chaos and laid the groundwork for an original third-party defense. Allen's attorneys say he's innocent and the real killers are a member of a Norse pagan religion, Odinism, and that Abby and Libby were killed as part of a ritualistic sacrifice. They further claim cops lied in order to obtain probable cause. Law enforcement officers investigating the Odinism angle refute the claims, saying no one in law enforcement believes the girls were killed as part of a ritualistic sacrifice. October 4th, 2023, Brandon Woodhouse posts a few YouTube videos claiming he has evidence in the Richard Allen case and was going to make the documents public. Immediately, prosecutor Nicholas McClellan filed for a search warrant on October 6th, and Woodhouse was arrested and faces 30 years and remains in custody at the Carroll County Jail as of the release of this video. October 5th, Rick Snee of Delphi After Dark and Murder Sheet host Kevin and Anya posted about a crime scene leak. True Crime Investigates gets the photos on October 6th, reports it to law enforcement on the 7th. Then, the revelation of the man behind the leak, Mitch Westerman. It was uncovered that he walked into Baldwin's office, took photographs of photographs. Westerman admits on a notarized letter that he did this. He distributed them to Robert Fortson. Fortson sent them to Mark Cohen. Then Fortson sends them to the Murder Sheet podcast hosts, and then ends his life. An in-chambers hearing on October 19th, 2023, attorneys appeared to withdraw from the case amidst controversy surrounding the leak.
We've had an unexpected turn of events. The defense attorneys have withdrawn their representation of Mr. Allen.
A few days later, the attorneys fight back against the judge, citing coercion and that they now want the judge off the case. But the judge tosses the attorney's request to appear privately and pro bono. She then appoints her colleagues, Allen County Chief Public Defender William Labrado and Fort Wayne attorney Robert Scrimmin to represent Richard Allen. Trial was pushed back from January 8th to October 15th, 2024. Stunningly, the former defense files a writ of mandamus with the Supreme Court of Indiana on November 6th. A couple weeks later, Mitch Westerman was arrested for a Class A misdemeanor, conversion. He posted bail in the amount of $250 cash. Attorney General Todd Rokita backs up judge in the Supreme Court battle on November 27th, Suddenly, he orders Richard Allen to transfer to the Wabash Valley Maximum Security Prison on December 7th. 3 weeks later, Kegan Klein moved to Michigan City Prison due to Richard Allen being housed in the same facility he was on December 20th. And to start off 2024, Labrato and Scrimmen echo the former defense attorney's accusation on unfair treatment of Richard Allen in the Department of Corrections. Then, on January 18th, the leaker, Mitch Westerman, faced off against a judge in Johnson County. Then the Indiana Supreme Court hearing. Attorneys for Rosie and Baldwin argued against attorneys for Judge Gall. A bombshell by the prosecutor as he filed to amend charges and add 2 intentional murder charges along with 2 kidnapping charges against Richard Allen. And then shortly after that, the Supreme Court rules to keep the judge on the case and reinstate Baldwin and Rosie back on the case. The judge denies the Franks hearing and motion to suppress. The ballistic evidence will be allowed at trial. The court found that Liggett did not lie in his report to obtain probable cause for the search warrant, and then on January 24th, 2024, and Scrimmen both withdrew themselves from the case. Prosecutor Nicholas McClellan responds to motion to transfer Richard Allen from the Wabash Valley Correctional Facility to a county jail. In the motion, it states that the motion has already been litigated at length and the court found the allegations outlined in that motion were without merit. Counsel references a letter written by an inmate, Robert Baston, at Westville, stating that the defendant is being mistreated as a fact and to be taken as true. However, prior counsel subpoenaed this inmate to testify at a hearing, and the inmate refused to leave his cell to attend. The state has documented Robert Baston's history with the court in prior hearings and filings with the court. The allegations by Robert Baston are not reliable evidence provided as sworn testimony, nor has he been subjected to cross-examination. That counsel for the defendant reasserts that the defendant is being mistreated by guards at Westville who practice Odinism. Again, this issue has already been addressed in previous motions and was found to have not had merit, and the motion was denied. Basically, it never even happened, and that Richard Allen poses a threat to himself and others. And the defense comes out swinging again, this time from the ground. A low blow to the judge by filing a new motion to disqualify her. Now, they want the judge thrown off the case again. Why? Because she denied their motion to suppress and Frank's hearing. What's gonna happen now? Will the judge recuse? Or will the defense attorneys be kicked off the case for good? But most importantly, is this going to delay the trial again? The prosecutor makes a bold filing on January 29th, 2024. The attorneys are losing ground as they've allegedly been caught fabricating evidence and intentionally leaking it to the public to support their narrative of Odinism. Andrew Baldwin admits he is the original leaker. He willingly shared the defense memorandum along with crime scene photos. But wait. These aren't just any crime scene photos. These photos were manipulated and altered by the attorneys and given to Mitch Westerman and a random civilian to review. These statements would indicate a potential exoneration of Mitch Westerman because Baldwin contradicted his own statements by saying that Westerman never had authorization to take the photos. However, Baldwin admitted that he had already willingly and unlawfully shared the evidence and theory with Westerman. But why would Westerman admit to a crime he didn't commit? Was he the fall guy to save Baldwin's ass? I'm sure it's looking extremely suspicious, as the defense was also caught trying to withhold information about the leak to Woodhouse. With more to come in this explosive turn of events, on the 29th, True Crime Investigates has filed another request for cameras in the courtroom for the trial of Mitch Westerman. In the memorandum in support of the request, it states, "I believe that allowing transparency with the public in this highly publicized case is not only consistent with Rule 2.17 of the Indiana Code of Judicial Conduct, but it is also a crucial step in ensuring justice and maintaining the public's confidence in the judicial process." The leaked crime scene photos by Mitch Westerman initiated a renewed public interest, making it imperative for the public to have access to the trial proceedings. The transparency provided by cameras in the courtroom aligns with the public's right to know and understand the legal proceedings surrounding such a high-profile case. The potential impact on other cases. The outcome of Mitch Westerman's trial could potentially influence other cases, particularly Richard Allen's. Allowing cameras in the courtroom would facilitate the dissemination of accurate and timely information, enabling the public to better comprehend the legal intricacies and potential repercussions of these cases. This serves the broader interest of justice and accountability.
It further states that case law has consistently upheld that YouTubers and individuals engaged in freelance news reporting on platforms such as YouTube and social media are considered members of the media and are entitled to First Amendment protection. The court recognizes that these platforms function as a modern-day equivalent of traditional news outlets, and restrictions on reporting through these channels may violate the constitutional rights of free speech and press. And in response to the objections to the previous request for cameras in a courtroom on January 11th and January 12th, the defendant and state objected to the media request for the cameras in the courtroom, citing grounds that the parties agree that coverage and broadcasting of ancillary hearings could potentially and unnecessarily shrink the jury pool. Furthermore, True Crime Investigates asserts that media coverage and/or broadcasting of the hearing specified jury trial session would not impede the defendant, Mitchell Thomas Westerman, of his constitutional right to a fair trial of due process. Stunning twist in the Delphi Murders, just 12 days before the trial of the mysterious bridge guy. In Carroll County, Indiana, Richard Allen is accused of brutally murdering 2 local teens near the historic Monon High Bridge in February 2017. 13-year-old Abigail Williams and her best friend, 14-year-old Liberty German, were tragically murdered. Allen was arrested in October 2022, and he remains in protective custody at the Wabash Valley Maximum Security Prison pending trial. Or allow audio and video recording of opening statements by both parties, closing arguments, and the verdict. This would allow the public to understand the most important moments of the case without having to delve into 3 weeks of testimony when it is summarized in closing. But remember that contempt hearing on March 18th? Baldwin and Rosie were on the hot seat after leaked crime scene photos and the arrest of Mitch Westerman, whose trial has been slated to resume after the Bridge Guy trial. But remember those Odinism guys I told you all were cleared and that you would find out in court documents? Well, now you're starting to see the receipts. But this ain't no Walmart scam, and you ain't double checking my shit, because I'll do it for you. You see, the defense team has built their entire theory that members of a Norse pagan religion called Odinist murdered the girls as part of a ritualistic sacrifice to their beliefs, and plans to try to convince a jury that this crazy scenario happened in the middle of the day, in the middle of the woods, in the middle of winter in Indiana. And even though Richard Allen admitted to being there during the time of the murders, wearing what the killer wore, and having a gun that matched an unspent bullet found at the crime scene, they insist that he was set up by the FBI, Indiana State Police, Carroll County, and everyone else in order to protect the Odinism guys, who all have extensive criminal records. They further claim that cops decided to derail a local CVS pharmacy technician with prior military service and a spotless record. They're saying he's the fall guy in order to secure an arrest just a few days away from the sheriff's election, making Tobe Lesenby the hero sheriff, who spent his whole term trying to solve the case. And Detective Tony Liggett miraculously becomes sheriff. Does it sound convincing? The court has ruled that all of that is false, and Liggett did not lie in a request for search warrant. Ballistics will be used at trial, and after many denied motions, they're still trying to lie. The contempt ruling is in. The court, having had this matter under advisement following a hearing conducted on March 18, 2024, and having reviewed the evidence admitted at the hearing, the court did not review any evidence that was offered but not admitted. The arguments of counsel and the briefs and memorandums submitted by counsel now finds that the state proved beyond a preponderance of the evidence that the defense counsel was sloppy, negligent, and incompetent in their handling of discovery materials. counsel failed to properly secure evidence and discovery material in this matter. Counsel negligently allowed the discovery outline to be sent to an individual unrelated to this matter, Brandon Woodhouse, who then disseminated that information to the public. Counsel further allowed their discovery materials to be compromised by Westerman, who in turn provided the information to Fortson and Cohen. Counsel has described Westerman both as a criminal and a valued consultant and confidant. Despite his court's findings of sloppiness, negligence, and incompetence, the state is required to prove that counsel's conduct was willful and intentional beyond a reasonable doubt for the court to find counsel in contempt. As the state has not met that burden, the court declines to find them in contempt of court for violating the protective order issued on February 17, 2023 regarding discovery. The state has also alleged that the defense counsel violated the gag order issued by the court on December 2, 2022. Defense counsel issued a press release on December 1st. The release contains statements that are potentially violative of the rules of professional conduct. As defense counsel's counsel correctly argues in his post-hearing brief, the gag order was not yet issued. As such, the court declines to find counsel in contempt of court as no order was in place. To the extent that the press release violated the rules of professional responsibility, the trial court has no jurisdiction to enforce those rules. As required by the rules of professional responsibility, the trial court will, therefore, send a copy of this order and the press release to the Office of Judicial and Attorney Regulation, Executive Director Adrian Meering, for that office to enforce the rules or determine counsel's ethical misconduct. Now, speaking of Brandon Woodhouse, August 19th through the 21st, 2023, he posted a series of videos on his YouTube channel, saying that he had evidence in the Richard Allen case and was told to delete it by Andrew Baldwin, who was also his attorney on an unrelated case at some point. Once Woodhouse mentioned that he was posting that evidence on his YouTube channel, prosecutor Nicholas McClellan filed for a search warrant and the probation department asked for a petition to revoke on August 22nd. Woodhouse was arrested on a probation violation and also obtained some hefty new charges, facing up to 30 years in prison. Woodhouse was scheduled for jury trial in Carroll County on May 13th. The same day as Richard Allen. However, a newly filed plea agreement and an order on his petition to revoke has now hit the docket. Judge Benjamin Diener, the man who recused himself from the Delphi case regarding Richard Allen due to the public's bloodlust for information and that he was publicly scrutinized on YouTube, well, he dismissed a resisting law enforcement charge, but had Woodhouse plead guilty to a level 5 felony, battery with bodily injury on a police officer, and a level 4 felony, unlawful possession of a firearm by a serious violent felon. Due to Woodhouse having 3 unrelated felonies within the last 10 years, the court has now instilled a harsher penalty under the Habitual Offender Act, which is a sentence enhancement. On the firearm charge, the judge handed down a prison sentence of 12 years, dividing it up 8 years in DOC, 2 years on community corrections, and 2 years suspended to probation. And the battery charge will run consecutive, which is back-to-back to the first. He tagged on an additional 6 years, but this time he suspended it all to probation. And on the probation revocation, the judge gave Woodhouse credit for the time that he had spent in jail, and that case is now disposed, and he started serving time towards that 18-year obligation he now has with the judicial system in Carroll County. But now, in a stunning twist, after handing down that sentence, Carroll County Circuit Court Judge Benjamin Diener slammed down the gavel one last time, took off his robe, and quit his job. This doesn't come as a surprise considering former mayor, now deputy prosecutor, has filed to run for judge of the circuit court, Shane Evans. Now, you want to talk corruption? You're about to see it firsthand. This is how you rig an election in Carroll County, because now the Republican caucus has to have a meeting to appoint someone of their choosing to replace Judge Diener for his remaining term. Wouldn't it be ironic if that person was Shane Evans? It's all coming up tonight as Judgment Day is approaching. In 12 days, the Bridge Guy trial. First, this case just keeps getting weirder. Remember Curtis Founts, the former Superior Court judge in Carroll County? The man who I hired as my attorney after he was caught on video trying to hook up with a female escort in Lafayette, Indiana. Well, it just so happens that I happen to be really good friends with both of them. And isn't it odd that Tiara reached out to me and told me about this incident in 2018, and I just didn't believe her, but she was persistent and finally released the video to the public on Diary of a Mad Escort website. In the video, Curtis Founts is seen entering the home, sitting down, having some casual conversation with the girl, and then moving in, fiercely kissing her, laying her down on a couch, climbing on top of her, and choking her. It's only when she said he has to pay up prior to the engagement that things halted. And then it all hit me at once. The most bizarre twist ever between multiple people in multiple locations, all revolving around the Delphi murders and the public figures involved. Curtis Founts is also the same judge that sentenced Ron Logan to 4 years in prison and brought him back on a modification in 2018. I was at that hearing, and Judge Curtis Founts scorned Ron Logan for, quote, picking up that stripper girl in Lafayette who was drunk in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning and bringing her back to your house is not good and lawful behavior while on probation. I'm certainly not going to hold that in my judgment against you, but I will mercifully modify you to home detention for the remainder of your sentence. The woman Founts was referring to was Tiara Jade, and now I learned that she also knew Ron Logan and that Curtis Founts knew that Ron Logan knew her. Confused? Well, Ron Logan was represented by Andrew Aki, who is also the exact same attorney that Kegan Klein had. But the time I spent with Tiara investigating the sex trafficking angle into the Delphi murders, I learned that there are sex clubs in and around the area that allegedly contain some high-profile people within the surrounding counties. Some of those people included attorneys, police, and judges. She went on to name several individuals whom I really won't say, but I will tell you this. Let's go back to Brandon Woodhouse. His attorney is Earl McCoy, who was previously the legal analyst for WLFI for the Delphi Murders news team. Until last summer, he got himself in a compromising position. Take a good look at this man right here. That is Lafayette, Indiana defense attorney Earl McCoy, who's recently placed a bid for prosecutor and judge of the circuit court. And now he places a bid for an inmate at the county jail. Earl McCoy is seen all over Facebook, YouTube, and news articles, flashing his fancy cars, souped-up motorcycles, and his urge to walk on the wild side. And on the night of May 6, 2022, things got a little too wild. A staff member working for the Lafayette attorney accused him of trying to force himself on her when they returned to the office after having drinks, according to a probable cause affidavit. McCoy, a Republican prosecutor candidate in 2018, faces a charge of sexual battery, which was filed Wednesday by a special prosecutor from Delaware County. McCoy recently has been the WLFI TV 18 legal analyst for the Delphi Murders case against Richard Allen, who is accused of killing teenagers Libby German and Abby Williams. Court documents indicate the alleged sexual assault, which is charged as a level 6 felony, happened on May 6, 2022. On that Friday evening, McCoy and some of the office staff went to a local pub after work, where McCoy drank 3 doubles of bourbon and Coke, according to the probable cause. McCoy asked one of the staff members to let him into the office because he forgot his keys there, which she did, according to the affidavit. Once in the office, McCoy poured the woman a drink and then asked her about her sexual past. McCoy approached her and put his hand on her neck as if he was going to kiss her. The woman pushed McCoy away, and he pinned her against the wall, grabbing her right hand and tried to force it towards his penis. I'll admit, I crossed the line, McCoy told another co-worker who confronted him after the alleged assault. During an interview with police, McCoy admitted to trying to kiss the woman after being out with the woman at the pub. McCoy told police that he asked to kiss the woman, and she told him no. According to the affidavit, at that point, McCoy said he backed off. McCoy told police the only non-consensual contact was when he touched the woman's neck while trying to get her to kiss him. According to the affidavit, McCoy denied trying to force the woman to touch his penis. Now that McCoy is facing a felony conviction for a sex offense, other details about his past are starting to be exposed. A criminal defense attorney with a criminal record.
When I was 20 years old, I pled guilty, was placed on probation, and given a chance to change my life. I seized that opportunity, learned from my mistakes, continued my education, and grew up to become the man who has been asked by this community to run for prosecutor.
Some political advisors of McCoy's advised him to expunge his criminal record.
I deliberately chose not to. I've not tried to hide anything. When they do actually file charges, take a long time to do it.
And that is exactly what happened in this case. It took 10 months for a special prosecutor to file charges against McCoy for the incident.
I have over 17 years of courtroom experience handling all types of cases. I've even presided over trials as Judge Pro Tem in Circuit Court.
Take a good look at this man right here. That is Lafayette, Indiana defense attorney Earl McCoy for the Delphi Murders case against Richard Allen, who is accused of a woman, and she told him no, according to the affidavit at the church. And after 18 months, it's like it never even happened. Some political advisors of McCoy's advised him to expunge his criminal record.
I deliberately chose not to. I've not tried to hide anything. When they do actually file charges, take a long time to do it.
And that is exactly what happened in this case. It took 10 months for a special prosecutor to file charges against McCoy for the incident.
I have over 17 years of courtroom experience handling all types of cases. I've even presided over trials as Judge Pro Tem in Circuit Court.
But the day before, Earl McCoy had Brandon Woodhouse sign his plea agreement and accept 18 years, he was over in Tippecanoe County signing his own for sexual battery. He's entered into a plea diversion. The defendant, Earl Edward McCoy, represented by local attorney Brian Decker, signed his plea on April 24th, which was actually the day he was scheduled for jury trial, indicating that all charges in this case will not be pursued if McCoy completes 18 months of probation, pays a diversion fee of $599 within 90 days of filing the agreement, and any bond he posted towards this cause will be released to pay diversion fees. McCoy must also maintain good and lawful behavior, undergo an alcohol and substance abuse evaluation, and complete any recommended treatment, and notify the court and special prosecutor within 48 hours of any change of street or email service address. So all in all, McCoy got a slap on the wrist for a felony sexual battery charge, and after 18 months, it's like it never even happened. Tonight on True Crime Investigates, we're gonna talk about twists and ties, sex and lies. Coming up tonight on True Crime Investigates, the Delphi Murders. The case against Richard Allen. A Court TV special featuring notable names in the true crime community, like Bob Motta from Defense Diaries, Barbara McDonald, formerly HLN, and one of the hosts of the Down the Hill podcast. But the judge has issued a gag order preventing anyone affiliated with the case from speaking. So the question is, what is this about? Is this to push a narrative and cause reasonable doubt in the case against Richard Allen? Will they point the finger at other suspects? Will Barbara McDonald correct her previous statements where she said that the crime scene was unsecured and then resecured days later, and that's when cops found the bullet that was connected to Richard Allen? Court documents recently revealed indicate that that was a total fabrication, as the bullet was found on February 14th, 2017. But millions of people have heard her say that. Thousands of them are running wild with the theory. But it's alright, ladies and gentlemen. We're gonna let them fight their fight and say their piece, because our time has not yet risen. But when it does, fuck around and find out. Or maybe this show breaks down the facts only and supports law enforcement and the community of Carroll County, and have faith that our law enforcement officers are doing the right thing. Because the community of Delphi is tired of being scared. For 7 years, we've lived with questions and looked over our shoulders in fear that he may be watching. And just when we lost all hope, cops made an arrest and finally lifted a weight off of the community and the family's shoulders. But now, the child killer activists are getting heated. Thousands of individuals, not from Indiana or Carroll County, have started a campaign to free the killer. But the Delphi community says otherwise. Could history repeat itself? Coming up tonight, I got my pimp hand ready, and all I need is some powder. Because we're laying the smackdown on Court TV. and their so-called special Free the Killer on the Delphi Murders case against Richard Allen. To free the killer. The Loganites are on a comeback. And the Bozolites have band together to push a narrative on national TV. But I got news for you. I don't need mainstream media to tell the truth. Are you ready to piss some people off tonight? This is True Crime Investigates, a Court TV review. The Delphi Murders. I am Anthony Greeno, and when it comes to the Delphi case, I am the only YouTube creator, actually, from the city of Delphi. And
3 words that have haunted a small town.
It's every town USA, and those things don't happen in every town USA. But it happened in Delphi, Indiana.
A chilling discovery.
Why Libby? Why Abby?
That turned a safe haven into a crime scene.
You have to be embarrassed if you're scared right now. A lot of people in town are scared.
Richard Allen is guilty.
Or is he guilty?
Bam. Or is Richard Allen guilty? Damn, what is wrong with this thing? Or is he guilty, ladies and gentlemen? Richard Allen, is he guilty? You can call in and talk about it tonight if you want to. Right here, I just got done building something, and fuck, is it hot as hell outside right now. It's so hot. I'm hot. And, like, it's hot. It's really hot in here. So I will probably be just chilling out in here and talking to people like we normally do. I was looking up some things while this video was playing, and I was really getting interested in the Kegan Klein, the things that he's doing right now, right? Like, if you guys haven't kept up with Kegan Klein, he's been talking to an individual online, or not online, I guess, on his computer type thing, on his jailhouse visits. And that person has been like sending some information, and as well, there was something else that I received that I had started to look into today after I read it, that I was sent. And it's very, very interesting that what was said in these things. It's kind of cool to see what was said between Kegan Klein and this person that did this. But it's also interesting to also see what this other third-party person sent at random. And I don't even know who this person is, but this person has pretty cool information when it comes to the Delphi case. And there's always something that happens in this Delphi case, right? There's always something that happens, like where you get, like you think everything is figured out, right? You get to that point, you think everything is there. You're figuring it out. You've got it locked in. And then, bam, you just found out there's a social media catfishing profile by the name of Anthony Shots. And after you do the Anthony Shots thing, you're like, okay, it's got to be this catfishing thing. Then all of a sudden they arrest Richard Allen, CBS worker, no ties to the catfishing thing, no social media presence at all that we know of. But an individual that did have a social media presence was Richard Allen. And he was an individual that had he had a real life. I mean, he's not a guy that just like doesn't exist, right? People say, well, we can't find him on the internet or anything. Well, you can't find him on the internet because he was smart about it. He knew everybody was on the internet looking for him in these groups on Facebook and shit. His wife was in some of the groups. You couldn't help but see him. You couldn't help but know about him because they were talking about him on the news and stuff. You know, so like these Facebook groups were a big deal, and they were a big deal to the community of Delphi and the citizens. And like Kathy Allen, Rick Allen were part of this, and they were a part of raising funds for the ball field, being like the public people, right? Just showing up in public and being there as a support. People are forgetting that Richard Allen confessed to molesting not only Abby and Libby, but other girls, and to the murder. You know what? He did. Apparently, that's what we hear. We don't know, but I mean, I'm sure 100% that he has done that before. If that is what happened that day, that he went out there to do that, like a sex crime, then he is 100% has done that before. And it was like his urge. He just had to do it. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, how many times has he done that prior to that? At like the trail systems or something like that, where he knew that he could catch somebody, right? He could catch a young girl